Hey everyone, welcome back to Contractor Growth Network. I'm Logan Shinholster, and today, instead of being joined by Chris, I've got Sky Stevens, who is the co-founder of the Association of Professional Builders. Sky, how you doing?
I'm really well. Thanks for having me, Logan.
So Sky, to kick it on off, can you give us like a 2-minute overview of who is Sky and what is this Association of Professional Builders?
Yeah, definitely. Well, essentially, we created the Association of Professional Builders in about 2014, and our goal, so what we call it is APB, the
Mm-hmm.
Association of Professional Builders, and our goal is to improve the residential construction industry, not just for builders, but consumers as well. Because I mean, we've all heard it. This industry has pretty bad horror stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our goal is to transform builders and the owners of building companies into businessmen. And as long as we can transform residential building companies into businessmen and professional services, that will actually deliver a world-class experience for their clients. And there's no longer going to be these horror stories in the industry. And we do that through coaching and training our builders and getting them to implement more and more systems, not just in their sales, their marketing, financial systems as well, day-to-day business operations, and then of course, world-class client experiences.
So is this like a mastermind group or a program that people join? I guess, how does it actually lay out?
Yeah, so essentially what our builders do is they join the Association of Professional Builders, and we have a membership base of over 360 builders worldwide at the moment. And once a builder joins, they get access to all of our on-demand systems. So we have systems in 5 different areas: sales, marketing, financials, operations, and even self-development, where they are ready to go systems that you can download and deploy into your building company. So things like a handover checklist, delivering a world-class handover experience, to a proven sales process for a building company, to pricing for a profit. All these systems ready to go with step-by-step video tutorials. So it's on demand. It's kind of like a Netflix for builders.
Mm-hmm. And I guess with those different systems, what is there one that most people join because of this? Like everybody's joining because they want sales, and then everything else kind of falls into place. Is there a specific one that most people join for?
Oh, it's such a good question. But because of our avatar, and I suppose that where the building company is in their own journey, they probably gravitate to one of, like, I suppose I could say top 3, if I'm honest, not a top 1, but one of them would be the proven sales process, which we call the sales blueprint for a building company. So that gives you a wonderful overview, and that's definitely one of the most popular. But then I'd probably say it's either one of our 2 major financials training. So we have what we call the work in progress accounting adjustment, which essentially is a calculator that especially any builder building new homes or major renovations has got to do this calculation every single month, just so they can truly establish how much money in their bank account is actually theirs and what's the liability, how much is owed still. So that would be the second most popular. And then the third would be another pricing one or another financials module. And it's all on pricing for profit. So gross margins, net margins, fixed expenses, an entire calculator on that, and actually building in profit to each and every job and how to forecast growth in a building company safely and securely, which is what we're all about.
Interesting. So the sales, but also essentially, are you making money off those sales? It sounds like are the 2 big drivers. Yeah.
Totally. Because at the end of the day, it's really, really easy to grow a building company, especially a new home building company. Because if you do the difference between new home builders and remodelers for a second, new home builders or building new homes is very much cash flow positive. You get so much more money up front. So you have a major liability. This is where work in progress accounting adjustment is so important, because you're holding on a lot more money up front, and then you pay it later on down the track because, you know, your costs become more expensive towards the end. So it's actually very, very easy to scale a new home building company because you're cash flow positive. It's the flip side for remodelers, because they actually end up self-funding these projects because the amount of staff, typically you're going to employ more of your like trades and contractors. They're actually employed within your building company, and it actually takes a lot more funding from your company up front. Like, you'll get the money later on. So it's harder to scale that company because you need a lot of cash in order to grow it. New homes, you actually don't. So one thing that we are so big on at APB, and we can sound like a broken record, but we say it all the time, is we're here to transform and systemize your building company. We want all of our building companies to grow, but safely and securely. We would never try and scale a builder that's not profitable, and even a building company that is not hitting the industry benchmarks as well. So we really are big on margins and making sure you are profitable at every stage. And before you even think about growing, let's increase those margins.
Interesting. So before we jump into that stuff, what is your background? How did you come up with APB? I mean, you're the co-founder, so I guess where did Sky come from?
So it's such an interesting story. If we rewind it even like about 10 years ago now, so obviously co-founder of APB, I co-founded it with my father. His name's Russ Stevens. But 10 years ago, we created a marketing agency for custom home builders. So we've been working with builders for over a decade. And essentially, I ended up personally falling into this industry. I'm in marketing. So marketing and sales, I can do that. But Russ's connections, he had a lot of builders. So our niche ended up being marketing for custom home builders. And we were generating tons of leads for builders. Like we could do that. We had a marketing agency. We could generate all the leads in the world for some builders. It was really interesting though, how come one builder over here was thriving with all the leads we were generating for them, and another builder over here wasn't? And they would actually say, hey, the leads are rubbish. They're terrible. This isn't working. Like, that doesn't really make sense. So we would actually dive into their systems and actually really look at what they're doing, because the same strategies were getting used for all these builders in different geographical locations, different, sub niches as well, and specific types of work. And we know that these strategies work. So what was the difference here? So we really started digging into their systems and their procedures. So it's super interesting. They had a lot of the skeleton there because we were providing a lot of the outline for them. So we took it a step further, and we actually started calling the leads ourselves and moved them through the sales process. And they were fine. They were absolutely fine when we started calling them. But the difference was, we called them immediately. So it was speed. And we sort of realized the disconnect between a builder that could thrive off of the leads we generated and the builders that, weren't, was not the leads themselves, but the sales process. So that actually then led us to create a sales training company. And that just took off so much faster than our marketing agency, actually teaching and mapping out a sales process and how to sell and scripts for qualifying, doing a discovery call. The speed at which you can call someone back matters. It comes down to seconds. That is what transformed it. And it's almost like the same thing happened. So we could generate all the leads in the world for some builders. We could teach them how to sell so they were closing clients. But how come some builders could still fall over? Well, that was everything else, wasn't it? So it's not just marketing that's important. It's not just sales. It's financial literacy and business operations as well. And that's when we got into self-development as well, like leadership, how to lead a team, how to manage your time and efficiency. So it very much organically led into creating the Association of Professional Builders, which is why we then cover those 5 pillars. So it's very much a holistic approach to really raising the standard of a building company. And so that's how APB was born. To give you even more intel, in our marketing agency, when we set up a new client, we monitored everything. We had KPIs for everything. So we knew every lever, every ratio, from the marketing side into the sales process, and then starting working with our builders one-on-one and at a much deeper scale in APB. we were completely able to make a tweak in a building company, and you could see the difference in margins, in revenue, in profit, gross and net. So that's why we've been able to outlay all of our benchmarks, and every ratio from your lead indicators to your lag indicators as well. So it's been a journey, but it's been awesome.
Interesting, because I know, so for us over at CGN, we start off as just straight marketing, right? Like my dad's a contractor, so I come from that world. However, it was the same thing. You started to find that some people could take the leads and nail it, and other people, Logan, these are crap. And you jump into it and you realize, well, somebody getting a lead and then calling them back pretty quickly is very different than emailing somebody back a week later to say, hey, are you still interested in this job?
And you know why? Well, you would know this, right? Why are some people calling instantly versus what's the difference between some people that delays a week? It's just fear. Everyone's saying, like, I don't want to come across pushy. I don't want to come across desperate. And it's like, you know what? We need to remove that from our mind, because you actually come across professional. When you delay a week, those consumers, they've completely forgotten about you, for number one, but they're already so deep into a sales process with another contractor that actually called them back instantly. And they've probably already had a deep phone discovery call with them. And now they've probably already met and they're already discussing ideas for their project. It's you've really just missed out because of your own fear of rejection, which is really tough to hear for a lot of people, but it's true.
And it's funny because even if that lead didn't call other builders, the fact that you waited a week just to email back, like if that's what it's like to acquire a customer, what do you think that homeowner's feeling about working together with you? Because communication, we keep hearing that. I hear that. I don't know about you, Sky, but all the time when I ask contractors, I'm like, what do people like about you? And they say, well, they love the communication. I'm like, okay, but specifically, like, how do you communicate? How can we showcase this? Because guess who else says communication? Every single one of your competitors. So what can we tangibly say is different or unique or beneficial about your communication? And then it's, well, I don't know. It just is. So it's tough. But it also, if your number one thing is communication, and yet you're taking a week to respond to leads that come in, there's a disconnect.
Yeah, it's like they think, oh, when a lead comes in, I don't want to look desperate. I can relax. They're still looking. I can contact them a week later. We would never dare do that when someone's paying us.
No.
When someone makes an inquiry, queries something, has a question, as a paying client, you never be like, oh, I don't want to seem desperate, I'll reply in a week. We would never do that. So why are we doing it to someone who's looking to pay us money for a service? That makes no sense.
So when you worked with somebody, and we're talking about builders, are these custom home builders? Are these, they developed so it's custom home builders.
Custom home builders and remodeling specialists. So guys doing major remodels, like whole home remodels, major extensions. Yeah. So
projects that are lasting months, not a couple weeks.
Correct. Yeah. Typically, the renovations are over $100,000 in contract value.
Beautiful. So with that, you step in, you're working with the marketing side, you're working with the sales side. I guess what does that process look like? Because I'm going to venture to guess it's a lot of touch points. It's going to be a lot of, staying consistent. So I guess share as much as you're willing, because I do understand that this is, proprietary. So what can you tell us about how that sales process operates and some of the benefits of it?
Yeah, totally. Well, I love that we clarified actually the contract value, because this is so important. And I was actually chatting or speaking with someone the other day who wasn't even in this industry. And I was like, you know what? If you want to learn really how to sell and how to market well, look at the most successful custom home building companies, because their price point are hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And if they can sell that, we can learn something from this industry, because you're selling someone's biggest asset. That's the biggest investment they're ever going to make. So it takes a lot of work. So calling back a week later isn't going to cut it. Really, you want to develop trust from the very beginning. But from the point of them actually having the guts and the inclination to even make a phone call to you, That's not the beginning of the process. The process starts way before that. So in our sales blueprint, what we're teaching is ironically marketing at the very beginning. You're already halfway in the sales process by this point. We need to start way, way, way earlier. And what we teach and walk our builders through is actually being there the second the thought comes into a consumer's mind about, I think I might want to build my next home, building a custom home. I think I want to remodel this home. I think I'm going to add a major extension, whatever it may be, even like raise my house, whatever it may be. So that actually elongates the sales cycle. The sales cycle in custom home building is so long. It can be as quick as 6 months or so, but it can take years as well. So this is a long game, that's for sure. So you can't make a tweak today and get instant gratification. They're called lag indicators for a reason. So to actually affect your revenue, your gross profit, your net profit, what you do today, that's going to take effect, in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months time. So it's unfortunate that it's so slow. You can grind out for a really long time before you see some real results, but it is worth it. So to actually rewind all the way to the beginning in the sales process, we talk about marketing. And the biggest thing a professional building company will do is proper content marketing. And this is a topic I'm sure you've talked about to death. It's not necessarily new, but it does work. So if we got to stop trying to reinvent the wheel and just do what we do really well, so we are known as the specialist in our local area, we want to dominate. If someone even thinks about remodeling, or even their friend shares with them, I'm thinking about remodeling. Oh, I saw an amazing video by this guy on YouTube or this guy on Facebook. You should check them out. And that's where it all starts. That's when research mode kicks in and you've got to be there. So we talk about content marketing via videos, blog articles. You want to pop those videos on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. We want to be essentially everywhere. We also have to be available on Google. So when we write our blog posts, they can rank in Google. We want to have good rankings when people are literally searching for a custom home builder in our area. We have to be there in research mode, but you got to be very aware when someone's in research mode, they're looking at other people. So we need conversion strategies to try and nail them as quickly as possible to at least get them to our inner circle. And that's why we try and teach our builders to get a database and get consumers onto a database. But here's the thing. To get one building contract, you need a lot of leads. We actually teach it's 100 new leads to get one building contract at the end, because so many people are interested. But only one person is going to pay $1 million to build that new home. So you have to be you've got to be all over your numbers to actually make this work, because he who can spend the most to acquire a new lead will win ultimately. That's who's going to win.
So when you talk about building this database, and guys, when it comes to this content marketing side of things, essentially what if you're listening to this right now, you're in my content marketing pipeline, right? By listening to this podcast, like the amount of people that we get a call and they'll say, "Hey, Logan, like I'm ready," and we'll go back. Okay, give me like, what do you know about us? Well, I've been listening to the podcast for 2 months, 6 months, a year and a half, right? It's funny, the way that we all buy is very strategic. We buy, we listen to somebody's podcast for a few months and then we buy. But then when we turn around and sell, we go, well, that doesn't work for my industry. Nobody looks up this stuff. That can't work for building. That only works for marketing and sales companies. So we sell completely different than the way that we buy. And we talk about that a lot on the podcast of, if you went out to buy a truck right now, you would buy in the US a Ford, a Chevy, or a Dodge for the most part. But it wasn't like you just randomly Googled trucks and one of those three popped up. We've all seen their ads since we were born. So we've seen their stuff over and over and over and over. And that's for a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 purchase. Now flip it for $1 million purchase. So
exactly.
The lack of content and just assuming, well, I just want leads that are ready to buy today. I mean, we're talking years of the time that somebody puts it in their head of this is how, hey, maybe like I think my parents, they built their own home. And I think it was the first 3 years of the process was going into all these different open houses to see what they like, what they don't like. And essentially they have just notebooks of all the stuff that they really wanted and all the stuff that they really didn't want. And they realized there was no house like that they could buy that was already done. And that's when they actually started researching the different custom home builders that they could hire. So it was like a 5-6 year process for them from the time that they started to look for a home to the time that they actually like hired somebody to break ground.
Absolutely. And you know what? Like, just going back to what you said, we're all wanting someone who can just like call us and they're ready right now. That's nirvana. It's a cool dream. We can construct it, but it takes a lot of work. It doesn't just happen. It happens because of our content marketing. It happens because of our sales process, and it will get to that point. It takes years. I'm not going to lie, to create good quality content, to really optimize every single stage of your sales process. It takes a really long time. You can't just click your fingers and it's done. But when you've done it, like our builders even say, like, it's just so natural now. How can someone not sign the contract once they've gone through all of these steps? And that's what we're building toward. But the most powerful content is informative content, valuable, informative content. So, you're just talking about cars and we've seen those ads, since we were 4 years old. A lot of them are direct response ads, like when they're trying to get like, go into the dealership, get this now. And for anyone who's really, really new to marketing and advertising, that's immediately what you can start thinking. So when, a builder typically is thinking, okay, now I need to get on Facebook, get on Instagram, they're just assaulting everyone who goes onto their profile because it's just pitching them, call us now, do this, make an inquiry. And you need direct response adverts, but in relation to actual awareness adverts. So let's throw out some content. Let's actually deliver some value to this audience. And that's going to be in the form of, just tips and helpful information. Like, hey, did you know the difference between a projects builder and a custom home builder, or a semi-custom home builder and a custom home builder? Do you know how many choice of taps there are? Be a person to talk about that. Be like, you know what? It's actually overwhelming. So if you have your non-negotiable list, that really helps. Here's how you can make your non-negotiable list for your home. Oh, you can download one of our templates to get you started. What if you were the person providing all of that information that just helps them with their journey? They may not use you. They may not even build a home, and that's fine because someone will. And when you do it this way, your margins increase, because you're seen as the expert, the specialist, the trusted authority. It becomes like a non-negotiable that someone's going to want to go with you. They're like, you know what? I want to go with Logan because I really trust him. He was nothing but helpful for the last 2 years. I got so much helpful information out of it. I'm at least going to call him first and have that conversation. Your marketing has given you the advantage that you get the first phone call. You better return that call and not muck it up for the rest of your sales process from that point forward, So
with all of this, how much labor is it going to take on the builder's behalf? Because I think we all say, okay, fine, Sky, I'll join, but like, when does my phone start to ring? I mean, are there a lot of touch points that the builders have to do where it's when somebody downloads something, they then call them to say, hey, I saw you downloaded this template. What motivated you to do it? Or is it all just kind of set it and forget it, and then 2 years later, everybody's going to start to call and say, hey, I've been following your stuff in your system for 2 years. Let's go.
That again is such a misconception, right? Like it's the caveman inside us. We always want the laziest, easiest, quickest way to achieve something. So it's like, okay, fine. If I start marketing, I'll post daily on Instagram and Facebook. And if I do that, I better get a contract knocking at my door. Look, that's still not going to happen. That's phase one. That's your content marketing. Then you've got to have some sort of conversion event. Offer them something of value, more value than what you've been delivering in your content so far on your blog, on your social media. So I'm not just talking about videos all the time here. Post images of your beautiful finished homes only. Never post progress photos on your social media. People are not in the market for a half-built home. They're in the market for a finished home. So only show finished homes, but make sure the captions are helpful. Give them a tip about, freestanding bathtubs versus built-in bathtubs. I don't know, anything, because that's interesting to people when they're considering this. That's phase one of your content. Then you need a conversion event. So what can you offer them? So it might be just a consumer guide, some sort of white paper. For anyone who thinks these don't work, they do. I promise you, they still work. So telling yourself the lie that everyone does it, they don't work anymore, you're just harming yourself. You're taking yourself out of this race. So give a downloadable guide, what's called a lead magnet, and get them onto your database. Owning that lead is your first priority, because once they're on some sort of database, you want to make sure you are communicating with them via email. And again, this is more content, and I'm talking at least once a week, minimum. I recommend 2-3 times a week to email your database with, again, helpful information. What we always talk about is you want to build up goodwill, and we call it like a goodwill bank account, because every time you ask for something in return, you make a withdrawal from this bank account, and you can't withdraw from a bank that has no money. You can't do it. You can't get any out of it. So every time you provide value and some sort of helpful information, you're making a deposit into that bank account. So if you can keep doing that with emails every week or every few days, with social posts with some tips, on Facebook, or new YouTube video comes out with a tip, you're making continual deposits into this bank account. And then you are ready to make an offer. We are having a limited opportunity for phone consults for, a design exploration meeting, something like that. Whatever your offer is going to be, that is making a withdrawal. Not everyone's going to accept it, but it's called like racking the shotgun. You can see who's hot, who's ready to take that next step. Few people are going to move to the next step. You've got to keep building over here. Some people take months, like you say, or years at this stage, but some people only take a little bit. The speed at which you move through the sequence doesn't matter. The order of the sequence does. That's the key to remember. So people can move through at all different speeds, but as long as they're hitting each and every step, that's the key. And then you're trying to actually convert them to get them into a conversation. The second you can get a phone number and speak to one of your inquiries, that's the next stage. And the second we talk to someone, what are we trying to do? We're trying to qualify them. Because there's a chance they're still not even qualified. And you get tons of them, especially when you first start advertising. You're going to get the low-hanging fruit, people that don't need a lot of trust to call you first. And it's that awkward stage. I mean, you would know this doing marketing for builders and contractors. The first few leads that reach out, they're almost the easiest because they'll trust anyone. They just want to talk to someone, and you just got to qualify it really, really hard. You've got to let the marketing build up in the background. And then you can move them through the rest of the stages after qualifying. But you've got to do that stage first. Content marketing, have a conversion event, get them onto your database, and make the right offer at the right time and consistently, because you can't just make one offer. You've got to do it over a long period of time so you can keep building up that goodwill and then making withdrawals to then get them on the phone to qualify them. And that's actually the first bit in your sales process now, qualifying.
So when we're talking about, presenting the offer, is that like, okay, great. Hey, whoever wants a house, we're going to start to build one soon. Let's go.
Oh man, I wish. You want to answer the question going on in their mind right now. So they're still in research mode. Okay. So oftentimes that offer, that first initial phone call is going to be super simple. It's like, have a complimentary consultation with an industry specialist. So you're not trying to bash them over the head with how amazing you are. You're trying to demonstrate competence. So it's very simply like how long you've been in the industry or how many homes have been built in the area, just demonstrating competence. So an industry specialist to see if what you want is roughly within your budget. That's as simple as it needs to be, because that's all people want to know at this stage, right? They don't really know what the exact amount is going to be for this project, new home or otherwise. And you don't exactly know either because you're not going to do a detailed quotation, but you can know a ballpark estimate, and you can know when someone is describing a palace and all they can afford is a little cottage. So you can have that initial conversation. And in that conversation, you literally take control from the beginning. Look, this is what we're going to come at by the end of this phone call. In order to understand that, or in order for me to establish that, is it okay if I ask you a few questions? What are they going to say? No? Like, yeah, that's fine. Go straight into your qualifying. You can't get into the B word question, what's your budget, before you establish even more trust. So let's ask them, where are you looking to build? They may not even be in your catchment area. So let's go, like, bring it right down to basics and truly qualify at its core first.
So we qualify them, right? They're great. It sounds like they're close. They want a house that we can build and in an area that we want. Is that when we then send out like a very detailed proposal and say take it or leave it, or what happens next?
I wish. It's just, again, it's a journey. So we've qualified them. The bottom line is they are building what we specialize in our area. Wonderful. So we teach our members about 7 questions for actually qualifying, and it's even things like, do you have land? Because if they don't have their land yet, why are we moving forward in this conversation? Send them some valuable bits of your content on how to choose a block of land. Set them up with you may have a partnership in a development where someone can hook them up with some land, but it's not right to have a concept meeting just yet. So qualifying is super important. Once you've established they're qualified, then you move into what we call discovery. Qualification is a simple fact check. Yes or no to these 7 questions will tell me if it's like a tick or a cross to move on. If they're technically all good, I want to know what your emotional drivers are. Doing a deep discovery with a prospect essentially tells you how to sell them. You're going to be asking things like, why, or what's drawing you to build a custom home as opposed to buying one already? Like, obviously they want a custom home. They're inquiring with a custom home builder. Try and get the reason why, because they're just going to tell you, this is our final home in life. We want it to be absolutely perfect. I've got the biggest list of everything I've done. I've visited hundreds of homes over the last 3 years. I didn't like any of them. I've got an entire list now of what I actually want. That's music to your ears. Like, that's absolute gold. You want to write every bit of that down. You want to relay that. You want to show you're listening. And now you know how to sell them as well, because there's an emotional driver. And again, there are about 7 questions to ask in the discovery phase of understanding what their emotional drivers are. Can it absolutely not go over a certain budget? Or is there big dependency on speed? They have to be in by Christmas next year because they're hosting, or they've got a new baby on the way, or whatever it may be. Or is it absolute quality that they're going for? The later stage in their life, they want it to be the best home they've ever had, best finishings. They've built 3 homes in the past, didn't rate any of their builders. They know exactly what they want this time. They're a lot more confident. Let's try and understand everything. And it's only at the end of this phase that you can get a true answer to the budget question. Because a big mistake builders make, or most people make, is they ask the budget question at the start of the first phone call, or at the start of the phone call in qualifying. And you're probably going to get a false answer. Like, they don't trust you yet. So if they're finally calling to make an inquiry and you go, okay, what's your budget? Do you really think it's going to be super truthful? They're just going to pluck a number out the sky, because there's that myth and that misconception that, as a contractor, you're going to jack up your price just to fit it, even if it can be done cheaper. So they're going to try and really lowball you. So if you ask it at the end, after actually qualifying them, so you're not even getting into the nitty-gritty of details if they're not qualified, and then doing a full discovery with them, so they're sharing a lot of emotional drivers. They've shared so much. They would have been talking for about 40 minutes at this stage. You're going to get a very truthful answer on budget. And how we teach our members to ask this question is try and get them to self-categorize. Okay, so what you're after, What are you planning to invest in this new home? Is it below 500,000? Is it between 5 and 600,000, or maybe 750,000 or more? Try and get them to self-categorize. Some people just come outright, oh, I've got 900,000 to spend on the construction. Brilliant, you've got that much trust. Some people just want to put themselves in a category, and then you can dig for a little bit more information. But by that point, you know exactly the kind of home they want. How many bedrooms, bathrooms, car spaces? Are they having a pool? Are they having a basement? You know a lot more. So by the time you ask that, you can understand, all right, ballpark, is that even realistic? And you can guide them in that conversation now as well.
It's funny you bring that up, because I know if you bring up the budget too early before those 7 questions, like you're thinking, oh shit, they got a budget of $1 million. I'm in. Well, that's $1 million for the house and the land is in the hottest spot of the city, and the land itself costs $550,000-$600,000. So now that $1 million home, it's really $400,000, and it's probably very different than what they're wanting. It's very different, and it's funny because I see that a lot where, you know, with the builders that we have, they'll come in and the lead will say, like, a lot of times they'll say, like, this is the budget that I have, and a lot of them will specify I already have the land ready to go, or I'm not even close, because those are two very different conversations of, they got the land, they want to be in, it's March, they want to be in by Christmas, versus, yeah, I'm just thinking. You know, I'm just one of those people that would rather talk to somebody earlier on, but I'm still 18 months out from like really starting this, because I retire in 18 months and I'm still living across the country. So jumping right into budget is like sometimes the kiss of death.
Yeah, you just have no idea what's going on. So it is a journey. And you know what? This is why qualification is so important. You need 7 questions that are your deal breakers, so you can get off the phone quickly if they are disqualified. If they are qualified, you invest time. These calls are 45 minutes plus. And I've had so many conversations with, especially building company owners, when they're the ones doing the sale. They're like, I just don't have time for these kind of conversations. Well, what are you expecting? Like, this is a massive investment from someone's behalf. You're going to have a lot of these conversations, about 20 of them per building contract. So 20 1-hour conversations just for one of them to go ahead into a building contract at the end of this process. It's a numbers game. We have to keep our ratios on point. We have to track our numbers, but you've got to invest that time up front. And again, like, you're still not done. Just post discovery. No, you can't send out a 1-page proposal. They can sign it and you've got a building contract. Then you go to the next phase. And if they are qualified, this was much easier in a pre-COVID world. Now you've got to get very creative with how this one happens, but we teach a meeting next. If they are qualified, you've done a deep discovery. Ballpark, it sounds like it can be done. You may have to build them a smaller home and manage their expectations, but that's okay. It's what you specialize in. You are the expert here. Then you invite them into your office for an actual meeting, or you do it over Zoom. Our builders have been doing this very successfully. And the meeting is with all the decision makers, the husband and the wife, like the couple, the entire family, whoever's involved, who's the actual decision maker, who's paying. And in that meeting, you are having, again, another discussion. You are getting them to bring examples. You are showing them examples of homes that have been built, the designs, ballpark, how much it cost, talking about orientation of the land, a few different design elements. And the goal of that meeting is to sell them into a concept design agreement. A big thing that we teach all of our builders to do is be a design and build company. You're not just a builder. You are not just the contractor in this situation. You have got to own these clients from the beginning, because the worst thing that happens in this industry is clients do it backward. Instead of going to a builder first, they think, oh, I'm going to build a new home, so I'm going to go out to an architect. They spend 40 grand on these wonderful architectural drawings, and the architect has been employed to design a wonderful home. Yes, they were told, it's an $800,000 budget, but look at this design, look at this feature wall, look at this staircase. And the clients are ecstatic, it's everything that they wanted and more. And so they're like, okay, I have my design now, time for a builder. Let's shop for a builder. And they flick out an inquiry to like 10 builders. Here are my plans. Can I get a quote, please? You are just a commodity in that situation. You have no value. That is when you end up in a race to the bottom and it's a price war. You have no differentiator. So if we do it right, we have our marketing in place, we're doing phone inquiries with people right at the beginning of their journey. We need to move them into our design process. Does not mean you have to employ a single designer in your own building company. You team up with your preferred architect. You guys work together, but you own the client. Because I've heard horror stories of so many contractors as well getting to this point. So they recommend an architect or a designer over here, and that architect teams them up with another builder to build the project. So you just got to own it. And we try and get our builders to pop their prospects and their customers now into a concept design agreement. Depends on the type of work you're doing. If you're doing much smaller projects, cheaper, I suppose you could say, it could be a couple $1,000s. If you're building $4 million homes, your concept design agreement probably is $40,000. It's all relative, right? And you manage the design process and you sell a package based on a designer, an interior designer, and a team of building experts to make sure your design is designed on budget. Because your expertise as the contractor, already, what, it's a difficult site. So that already is amping up a lot of the price of construction. So we could probably have very simple yet elegant design elements that could save you costs over here because it's going to get spent on site access or whatever it may be.
So I love the design aspect of it because a lot of contractors, like I'm a huge proponent of design because it takes you from just the quote unquote labor to consultant that then backs it up with the labor, but the consultant piece is really how you make the money because they're paying you for your brain, for your everything. Because like my parents, they went to the architect first. Architect had a hell of a sales process where they essentially said, close your eyes. When you're in your garage, what do you see? Great. Take 5 steps forward. Now what do you see? And 3 hours later is what they said. It was almost like going to a psychologist. The architect had 5 pages of notes. Well, the issue was then from there, the architect apparently took like 6 months to ever, they already contacted the builder, ready to go. Architect is waiting 6 months before they ever presented any designs or blueprints or anything. So the whole project was delayed. And then growing up in this house, there's drawers in the kitchen that you can't open both of them at the same time because they don't fit. And it's it's a lot of that stuff that on paper it looks incredible. But then when you actually put it into place, now the GC has to be the bad guy to say, hey, look, I know this looks amazing. However, let me show you what's actually going to happen. So I've talked to a couple of real estate agents that say, look, go to a builder first because they're also going to be better at finding land for you if that's what you're looking for compared to an architect. So it's just, I like what you're saying about this, if you go out of order, you're in trouble, not just for the contractor, but also the future homeowner.
But this is what perpetuates the myths in the area, in the industry as well. Stupid builders, why can't they build this on budget? My architect designed this to my budget. Well, architects are incredible. So that's one thing I want to get out the way. Architects, designers, absolutely incredible. What they're doing, amazing. So are the builders and general contractors. That is just different level expertise that you have in this game. So what do you think happens when you get them to work together? Oh, that is a beautiful relationship, which needs to be talked about in your content marketing so that your consumers and inquiries and prospects go through the right process so they get the outcome they want. Because talk about the horror stories, talk about, if you go this way, this has happened. And everyone that reads that article or sees that video is like, yeah, I've heard that story. Yeah, that's true. We all heard it. So talk about it. It blows your mind though, doesn't it?
It does. And when you like lay it out there, it just makes so much sense. But again, a lot of us, we sell very differently than the way that we buy. Because you don't go for the car stuff, you don't go into a car dealership and just pick out any car you want and test drive it. You got to sit down with somebody, and that person's going to walk through stuff with you, and they're going to consult with you. So we love to change up the process for our own stuff because we just assume, well, I just want people ready to buy right now. But when we go buy stuff, it's not like that. So let me ask you this, Scott, on one final question. This is a hell of a process, where we got the content marketing, we've got the conversion side of things, then we've got the initial pre-qual, then we're moving them down into the design. Which of these, when you talk to builders and remodelers, which of these is the hardest for people to get their head around?
I think on some level, a lot of people understand content marketing. There can be an initial fight, if it's a bit nerve-wracking putting yourself out there. So I think that's the initial like ick factor. They don't want to get on camera, but on some level it makes sense because they then reflect, that's how I'm in your sales process. I think for any construction company who has not gone down this path before, it's getting involved in the design process and taking the money themselves for it. Because we teach that you charge for the design. So the consumer pays you. You want your relationship to change with the consumer. Because the second someone's handed over some money, it's a smaller chunk of change than the building contract, but you have changed that relationship. If you don't have a single designer on your team, you contract, you pull in one of your favorite architects, you pay them a fee for their work as well. So you've got to make sure it works for everyone. So you're paid for your consultation effort, they're paid for their design work. If that's not been done before, that I think is where a lot of builders struggle. But the second they do their first one, they're like, it's that easy, it's suddenly not a problem at all, and they'll do like 20 more, and they're super excited to do them. But it's that first one, if they've not done it before, they feel a bit icky, like they shouldn't, because they're not the designer. But it's exactly like what you're doing on site. You use subs and you subcontract out other work on site. So this is exactly what we do with the design process. And to go a step further, the next step after that still isn't signing a building contract. What we teach is the next phase is a preliminary building contract. So it's that step in between a building contract over here and your concepts over here, to go from 20 grand to $1 million or whatever it may be, or 800 grand. Again, that's still a massive jump. What can we do pre-contract in a lovely, beautiful package to tee people up nicely for signing a building contract? Because there's still so much that needs to be done. Probably need engineering, construction drawings, all of their selection choices done, and like a quote collation service. So your preliminary building contract is how builders get paid for producing a fixed price building contract that they can sign when they sign the contract and pay a deposit. So that used to be the biggest stumbling block. But if you haven't done designs yet, concepts can probably be the scariest thing. But it's all these little steps and touch points. It makes signing that building contract so much easier, because they've just been compliant through another step and another one and another one after that. And
when you lay it all out, it makes so much sense that, well, all these leads that you get from boosting a Facebook post probably are not going to be good leads, because they haven't seen the content, they haven't been on the email list, and they haven't ever seen a design. So when you try to go right for the jugular and say, great, what's your budget? You missed, 6, 12, 18 months worth of nurturing and relationship building, which is why referrals are always so much better than online leads. And it's not that people don't buy online, because we all go online and buy. It's just, you just essentially try to replicate, at least from our side, we just try to replicate why people hire you specifically as the contractor. Let's take that, put it online. And the best part is you can do it at mass scale. You're not talking to one person one-on-one. You're essentially talking to the whole area around you of, this is what's great about me, essentially. And it's much easier. So you just fill in the pipeline, but when you lay it out there, it almost makes too much sense, huh?
I love what you just said, though, about referrals, because this is a big bit of pushback again for anyone who's not really invested in marketing and advertising in the past. I'm talking like 1 to 3% of your annual revenue into paid ads kind of investment. That's where you need to be sitting. I just talked about this literally at the start of our conversation. It's at 100 leads to 1. So we teach what we call 100 to 1 ratio. 100 leads, 100 names and email addresses entering your database. One of them will be a building contract in 6 months' time, a year's time, 18 months' time. Who knows? It's a process. But we've literally proven that ratio time and time again in our hundreds of builders that we work with. And that 100 to 1 ratio, once we mention that, we can instantly get pushback from builders like, oh, I can get a referral and 1 in 2 will go ahead, or 100% of them will go ahead. And it's like, well, as they should. They're referrals. They're actually much hotter. You actually can increase your margins on referrals as well, because they're coming through really hot from a recommendation from someone they know, like, and trust as well. So you should have a much better conversion rate. Paid advertising is a different story. You are doing this all on your own. And by the way, you can't scale a business on referrals. Referrals are wonderful. Every business should get them, but you cannot scale any business, let alone a building company, on referrals alone, because you are dependent. You are completely relying on someone walking through that door. And what happens when they don't? You're out of business, and it's just that sad story again. So we've got to be comfortable with that 100 to 1 ratio. And by the way, actually, I think even the more luxury end of the market you're in, it's almost closer. It could be closer to 200 to 1. Think of Ferrari for a second and Bentley. How many people do you think walk into that showroom who are never going to buy a Ferrari? They deal with it all the time. That's it. You are that aspirational purchase. You're going to get so many people visit your Instagram. You can have tens of thousands of followers, the better high-end or higher-end you are. Are all of them going to buy? Absolutely not. But you know what you are building? You're building prestige. You're building status. So that line of people who can afford what you do, they're going to like you even more because you're so in demand. It's that beautiful supply and demand ratio that we see time and time again. But it's so worth pointing out, the higher end of the market, I could say you're in, don't be discouraged, because you just need one profitable building contract that pays for your marketing for those 100 other leads to come through your funnel. It's all self-liquidating, and that's what it should be, should you have your proper margins in place and you're growing your building company safely and securely. And it all wraps up beautifully for us.
Well, perfect. Well, Sky, I appreciate you coming on today and walking us through that. If people want to connect with you and learn more about APB, what's the best way about going and doing that?
Well, we do post, obviously, daily helpful content on Facebook. So the Association of Professional Builders on Facebook. You can check us out on Instagram as well. Our handle is just APB Builders. And of course, if you need any free resources, I wanted to check out any free trainings that we've got live, head over to our website, which is apbbuilders.com.
Perfect. Sky, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you so much, Logan. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was. Thanks.